Thank you very much. I was thinking of looking up that Truth-Telling Project letter tonight, actually, on Google or something, see if I could find it, because it did seem relevant, so I'll try to get a copy from Ben later. Well, you must have all been struck when you came in this room the way I was. Wow, this is a big congregation, and is filled with the people who've been supporting me, among other things, and the causes that I stand for in terms of anti-intervention and nuclear weapons and so forth. So long, there are old friends that I'm meeting here now tonight, icons of the human rights and peace movement, like Rose Styron is here, Louise Brune, who I remember very well in '71, when she was walking 450 miles from Newton to Washington at that time to do what she could do and to show that one American citizen could stop business as usual and go as far as they could, really, to try to convince people what a terrible course they were on, to speak up for it. I'm really happy to be getting an award like this from the ACLU, because I've been promoting the idea of awards for whistleblowers for a long time. For very specific reasons, and I think they're very useful in terms of what we need. As a couple of the speakers have already said up here tonight, we need more whistleblowers, definitely more. Actually, we're in a dark time now, as you know, in terms of climate, in terms of, actually, I would say the possibility still for nuclear holocausts in this world. And if the United States is not a leader in moving the world away from these matters, the change is not going to come about, and it's not going in that direction now. I've thought for a long time that what Congress needed to act on these matters was public pressure on them to do it, a different kind of standard for public officials as to what they ought to do and what they ought to tell. And that to do that, you needed Congress and the public needed information from the inside that was that would reveal to them the need for this kind of pressure. Actually, the very first mention, the best description of what the Pentagon Papers had to tell, I think, back in 1971, was told by H.R. Bob Haldeman to President Nixon on the second day of publication. It might have been the third day, that time they ended it. I think it was actually the second day. It started out on a Sunday, and on Monday, Bob Haldeman was quoting to him something that had come up in the meeting that morning in the White House. That was, as I say, I think the best description, all based just on two editions so far of the Pentagon Papers that I've ever seen of what they had to convey to the American people. And who he was quoting was Donald Rumsfeld, who was in the, Richard Cheney was working for the administration at that time too, so they were back there then. And Rumsfeld, or actually Haldeman said to the president, as Don was saying in the White House meeting this morning about the Pentagon Papers, out of the gobbledygook comes a very clear thing. You can't trust the government. You can't believe what they say, and you can't rely on their judgment. And the implicit infallibility of presidents, which has been an accepted thing in America, is badly hurt by this, because it shows that people do things the president wants to do, even though it's wrong, and the president can be wrong. So, not a complete fool, huh, at that point. And I remember when I finally saw that quote later, it's on the White House tapes, I thought, well, he knew that then, he saw that then, he was smart enough to paraphrase it that well. How could he have done, later what he did? He did a lot of things that were wrong. He was a major promoter of course, of getting us into Iraq, and it can't be much wronger than that. So if he knew this much, if he knew the past, how does it work out that people who remember the past are also condemned to repeat it? Like Rumsfeld, for example, how realizing this, and then I said, well, maybe what he read had a different meaning for what it meant to me at the time. The president can do these things that are wrong, And the people below him will obey him even though they know it's wrong, and they'll keep their mouths shut indefinitely. A lot of the Pentagon Papers were 30 years old coming out now, and we can all get away with it. Yeah, there's a Pentagon Papers may come out, years after the war has started and so forth. But this is the way people will act, and this is the way I act, Rumsfeld, and this is the way people below me will act. And actually, that's pretty astute as far as it goes. The president can do these things and can get away with it. Now, somebody today tonight, brought me a piece of paper here that I was very struck to see. It's a handbill for a set of talks at the Community Church of Boston. I'll bet some of you here will remember Donald Lothrop, who was the minister of it. And on May 23rd, 1971, 43 years ago this month, is Dr. Daniel Ellsberg. And the subject I was giving was criminal wars and the responsibility of officials. Very interesting, May 23rd. I didn't know then that 3 weeks later, the documents of the criminality, really, and of the nature of our war would be coming out in the Pentagon Papers. The Times hadn't told me they were coming out yet. The responsibility of officials in a criminal war. Well, first there's the question of what is their responsibility? Are they going to be held accountable? And how do we figure out who's responsible for what? We haven't seen that. We've never really seen that. How about the question of what is the responsibility of officials who find themselves in a criminal war to do? What should they do when they perceive it in those terms? Think, for instance, of what we were hearing with Kathy Harris, the excruciating, vivid things that she was saying face to face among her colleagues for some while. And ask yourself, how long would it have taken you to see such things and then to decide to do something about it? Now, there are a lot of officials, I can tell you, from Vietnam who understood that what we were doing then was hopeless, and even a smaller number, but many who said wrong to continue that war. A few who'd read the Pentagon Papers even knew it was wrong to get into it, backing the French in a colonial reconquest of Indochina from the very beginning. As Snowden has said, people in his colleagues, virtually all of them understood that much of what they were doing had no adequate national security justification and was in fact illegal and criminal. And he, like me in his various interviews and whatnot, chat logs he's done, and the other whistleblowers present, like Tom Drake and Jesselyn Redak, other heroes of mine here tonight, whistleblowers, I'm sure have faced the question that I asked, faced many times. Gee, you put out these secrets and you thought it was right and so forth. Where do you draw the line on telling secrets? That was the question I faced 100 times. And I was struck that I was never asked as a former official, and no other official was ever asked, where do you draw the line on keeping secrets? Where do you draw the line on obeying the president when he's clearly, as Rumsfeld was saying here, is clearly wrong, illegal, on a disastrous course, and so forth? Where do you draw the line on keeping a promise to keep secrets when the secrets involve these kinds of crimes and risks? I never have heard that question asked, and one thing I would put to us all here tonight is that is a question that we should be putting, and we should be hearing asked of our officials. We should be encouraging people to ask it. What made you think, I was never asked this, what made you think you had the right to keep those secrets in 64 and 65 and 66 when you knew you were being lied into a war? Well, talk about a criminal war, the responsibility of officials. Iraq was a question where we were lied into a war, and in this case, a clearly aggressive war, crime against the peace in terms of the UN Charter, even more clearly than Vietnam, actually, with hundreds to thousands of people understanding that we were being lied into that war and that it was going to be a disaster. And we heard from none of them. Chelsea Manning was not at a high enough level at that point to tell us. Edward Snowden was not at that point. and was not ready. He, like Manning and like me earlier in Korea, volunteered to go into the military on the belief that our president must know what he's doing, and he could be wrong, but he has our best interests at stake. He has more information than any of us do, and I will act as if he knows what he's doing and it's the right thing to do. Snowden was given that question. I'll take out my hotline to the NSA here. And I'd love it if I leak this into them, actually, if they haven't read it. It's from the Vanity Fair article on Snowden, which is very good, which I thought, I'd recommend to you to read. And he was saying this: every person, and he means every person, I mean everybody here and me and everybody, every person remembers some moment in their life where they witnessed some injustice, big or small, and looked away, because the consequences of intervening seemed too intimidating. And the consequences of not looking away and rather exposing are to, at best, to take part in symposia or articles which have the heading, there was the heading in Vanity Fair on Snowden, Patriot or Traitor, question mark. And I've actually been in several of those recently, supporting Snowden, who is a hero of mine. And at first I was just, and I still am really, outraged at this question being asked, with a question mark. Patriots, as I said, but I can tell you, it is not encouraging to potential whistleblowers to understand that at best, they will be able to discuss the subject in question in public, whether or not they are traitors. That's not something people really want to get into. It's not what people on the Hill in Congress want to get into, of whether their vote constituted patriotism or treason. So they avoid it. Anyway, I didn't finish the quote, which is the part I wanted to get to. He says, everybody has looked away because the consequences of intervening so intimidating. But there's a limit to the amount of incivility and inequality and inhumanity that each individual can tolerate. I crossed that line, and I'm no longer alone. Now there, I have to, being almost twice the age of Snowden, say that my life has taught me that he's a little too optimistic about that. If crossing that line means there is a line at which you won't tolerate it anymore, meaning you'll expose it, you'll resist it, you will act to obstruct it and stop it. You will not merely say, I won't be part of this, but you say, I will not let you do this, at least in secret, invisibly. When he says that each person has the ability to cross that line, experience doesn't clearly confirm that, and I don't really know the answer. Almost everybody thinks, and I can give you some very bad, miserable examples in history of this, that they have a line they would not cross. I'll do this, but I wouldn't do that. But the line is movable. That's what it turns out. When you get up to that point of decision, it's like a mirage. It moves ahead, and you're not quite there yet. And what the difference was for Snowden, for Chelsea Manning, for Tom Drake and Jesselyn Radack, both, that in fact, the line didn't move. And after years of seeing that something wrong was happening, as Rumsfeld said, that the president was doing wrong, that the program was wrong, they decided not only to cease being part of that, but to oppose the President of the United States and expose what he was keeping secret wrongfully and the programs of that. And that cannot be done without great risk, without almost the certainty of very heavy penalties. And not only in the national security line, by the way, but of losing your clearance, your access to important people, your role in events, but your job, your income, your career, and very often with it, your marriage, your children's education, and in particular, your membership in a group of people whose patriotism earlier was defined by we're all working together to work for the president. That's it. That defines us as patriots. And you lose them. you've betrayed them because you've raised the question in their minds or their families' minds. Am I really doing what I should be doing in terms of the policies we're following? The things exposed by Tom Drake and Snowden now, as I say, were known to thousands of people, actually. And a few of them actually leaked eventually. The New York Times eventually ran the story after a year after it was leaked to them, despite the president's warnings, but not with documents. And for 40 years, I've been saying, finally, to audiences that might, in a couple hops away, reach the ears of somebody in the administration, don't do what I did. Don't wait till the bombs are falling. Don't wait till thousands have died before, if you have documents showing that there's public is being lied to, the Constitution is being defiled and shredded. At whatever personal risk to yourself, consider taking those documents to the public and to the press and to Congress. And in time actually to change these things. Well, people always have, admirably, I think credibly, have leaked at times. We know without anonymous leaks, we wouldn't know about the prisons, the secret prisons, the detention, the torture, for which the Times and the Post got Pulitzer Prizes earlier from anonymous leaks, and those are very good. But actually, not much changed, and I personally think that one thing there was that they didn't have documents, in massive documents, enough to really show this is the program, it's been going on for years, it's understood inside to be wrong. That makes a lot of difference. That's what the Pentagon Papers showed, as Rumsfeld said, that people inside knew what the critics outside were saying, and they went ahead anyway. Okay, right now, for instance, we have this 6,000-page study on torture by Dianne Feinstein's Intelligence Committee. Can't get it okayed, declassified by the CIA, by the people who were incriminated by that study, and the president also. Obviously, someone should leak that study if they can't get it out. Senator Rand Paul, with whom I have plenty of disagreements, but not on everything. And when he's been saying, I saw just yesterday in the paper, that he's putting a hold on a presidential appointment until we can find out the internal memos that particular lawyer and judge made with respect to killing of Anwar al-Awlaki, killing of an American citizen without any kind of due process, whatever. Well, again, yes, he's right. Those memos should come out, or someone should leak them. That's what should happen. And someone in ACLU here will put it out. And as for these officials, the question of the responsibility of the officials, as I say, does go beyond simply disagreeing within or simply getting out even, which a few do, but very rarely. It really does involve telling us. And I think that every event like this, which shows to potential truth tellers that there will be people who support and who know it's not a question, patriot or traitor, but understand that this is a very helpful, useful, valuable, and courageous form of patriotism to give people the information they need in order to act as if they were citizens in a republic and not in a monarchy. And I remember many years ago, about 20 years ago, I'm a ex-crime ed, Crimson, Harvard Crimson editor. That's the closest I came to journalism. But I was at an annual, not an annual, I'm sorry, but a reunion of the Crimson. And I chose that event to suggest the thought, that I haven't done publicly since, that there should be a Pulitzer Prize for sources to really bring out the point. And naturally, most of them would have to be anonymous, and the reporter would have to do it. In those days, we didn't know the names of any of the sources except me, because I'd been the only one prosecuted, and that's why you knew my name. But anyway, you should really recognize the fact that these people were part of the journalistic process and were doing something very much as the New York Times prize just this year said, in the public interest. And obviously the Times relied for that on people like Chelsea Manning but in this particular case, Ed Snowden, as well as the journalists who worked on it. So I remember saying at the Crimson thing that not to seem self-serving about this, the prize should not be retroactive on this, the Pulitzer Prize for Sources. But I said I wouldn't object, though, I'd like it if the prize were given in the old theater in Santa Monica where they used to give the Oscars, which happens to be across the street from the Rand Corporation. And in fact, I wouldn't object if the prize consisted of a stylized, formal nude statuette to be called the Daniel in this. So this is a substitute. This is a very good representative of that, and I'm very pleased that you are here to honor people like Tom Drake, Jesselyn Radack, and Ed Snowden, because that does increase the chance that there will be more like them, and we will know what we need to know. Thank you.